What up, Prof leaders? Welcome back to my channel. Today I will give you an assessment of the first 100 days of the new PPPC government in Guyana. Stay tuned.
Oh, this is my day. I'm ready to take it on, come what may.
So guys, this is my assessment of the first 100 days of the PPPC government. And I'm going to give it to you as I see it. In other words, this is a channel for politics, economics, food, and fun. And today I'm giving you the politics as I see it. Right? This is just my opinion, and it has not been influenced by anybody. Just me. Okay? I'll give you 10 items to consider in assessing the performance of the PPP government in the first 100 days, and I will give them a grade, which is my grade for the performance of the PPPC government. Number one, when they came to office, the first thing the PPPC did is they staged an inauguration ceremony at the National Cultural Center, and that resulted in a surge in coronavirus cases in Region 4. So the first thing they did is they caused a surge in the number of coronavirus cases. In fact, within a month of taking office, they were double the number of deaths in coronavirus, right? They were double the number of cases and twice the number of deaths in coronavirus. And then they continued to do the same kind of behavior, causing surges by hosting a large event at the National Stadium, which was in the name of consulting for land. In other words, people were encouraged to meet. And so there were people lined up for miles and crowded at the stadium during the pandemic in order to consult with the Minister of Housing and his team for land. And this caused another surge in coronavirus cases. So point number one, down, they worsened the pandemic in Guyana in the first 100 days in office by deliberately flouting the science behind what should not be done in the middle of a pandemic. Number two, they flooded residents off of state land. So the next thing they did, right, the same people who were addressing the issue of housing, is that they put their attention on poor people who were squatting on state land, who didn't have anywhere else to live, and they used irrigation pumps to flood the land, making dozens of Guyanese citizens homeless. Right? So these people had to find shelters because they could not stay in the shacks that they had constructed on land because they couldn't get land for the past 25 years, right? And I'm telling you this because I know I've been trying to get land for the past 7 years. I applied for land when I came back to Guyana, and I'm still waiting for land. There are people who've been waiting 30 years. So this new government came, and the second thing they did is they flooded the people off the land. And the reason why they did it is because they wanted to reclaim the land so that they could put investments in the sugar industry, which I've already said before has a failed industry. The sugar industry is not the future of Guyana, and the reason why is the markets for sugar are not coming back to Guyana. In other words, there is no market for an increased production of sugar. Even if you decide to put people back to work in the cane fields, cutting cane and weeding grass, the amount of sugar you produce will not be sold because the markets for sugar are gone. Right? Sugar is a very highly political commodity. It's controlled by international politics, and the politics are not on our side. We will not be able to regain the sugar market. So point number two, fail. They flooded people off the land and are putting money back into sugar, which is, in fact, that's point number three, putting money back into sugar, which is a failed commodity industry. Point number four, they fired all the political appointees. Now, there's no problem with firing political appointees. It creates chaos and havoc. It removes institutional knowledge. But if you don't have confidence that these people are capable of doing their job and you think they are political appointees, it's the right of every new government to replace those political appointees with their own political appointees. But the problem is that they also went ahead and committed number 5. They fired people who are not political appointees, right? So they fired the head of the Department of Energy, Dr. Mark Bino, who is not a political appointee and who is eminently qualified for the job, right? He has a doctorate in economics and environmental studies, and he is the perfect guy to be looking over the oil sector, the Department of Energy. They fired the head of the EPA, another eminently qualified Guyanese citizen, Dr. Vincent Adams. Right, he is famous for being well known in energy circles in the United States, where he worked for years before returning to Guyana to make his contribution. He is not a political appointee, and they fired him. He was overseeing the environmental agency, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. So number 5 is that they fired people who were not political appointees. They even went on to fire the permanent secretaries, and permanent secretaries are by definition not political appointees. These are people who are put in charge of the ministries so that they keep the institutional knowledge from one administration to the next. So when the government changes, you don't lose the continuity of the functioning of these ministries. So that's blunder number 5. Number 6, they detained and they locked up Haitian immigrants. So this is an inherently racist move by this government. They decided that a flight from Haiti or from somewhere in the Caribbean to Guyana that landed with Haitians had to be detained. And they detained and locked up 26 Haitian nationals. Now Haiti is a member of CARICOM. Guyana is also a member of CARICOM. And we cannot be treating, we're not, our signatory to CARICOM prohibits us from treating or discriminating against CARICOM nationals, right? We have experienced discrimination in the Caribbean at places like at ports in Barbados and Trinidad in the past, and you would think that these people understand that you can't do that to Caribbean citizens because we didn't like it when it was done to us. However, that didn't stop them from detaining 26 Haitian nationals, and these people are still detained, they're still locked up, still prevented from moving about the country for no other reason than the fact that they are black and that they are Haitian. So that's number 6 down. They delayed the production of the oil production schedule on the basis, on the guise that they are going to review the oil contracts. So when this new government came into power, in fact, what they did during the campaign is that they said that the oil contracts were all fraudulent and that the ExxonMobil was robbing Guyana, and I have debunked all of these fallacies in a previous video. You will check that out. I actually discussed the oil contracts. So they came in saying that the oil contracts needed to be reviewed and therefore delayed the production schedule. Turns out that nothing happened, nothing changed, so all of it was just a political charade, right? Nothing changed. All they did is delay the production schedule and interfered with the operation of the oil sector. So the oil fields had been granted, concessions had been granted to foreigners who were not resident in Guyana, people we do not know. And these people later flipped this concession for a profit. And the new government claimed that there was nothing wrong with that. Number 10, they ended the ban on vehicles that were 8 years old or older. So the previous government had placed a ban on the importation of vehicles that were 8 years old or older. I explained in the past that this was actually very stupid, because the reason why they placed this ban is because they said that older vehicles are less safe. But I also explained that safety features have nothing to do with the age of the vehicle. They are vehicles made in the 1980s and the 1990s that are safer today than vehicles that are built now, right? So safety has to do with safety features. It has to do with airbags. It has to do with physical restraints, seat belts, crumple zones, and all the new features that are in cars. But some of these features have been in cars since the early 2000s. So banning vehicles that were 8 years old and older was a very stupid move by the previous government. So the PPP government removed the ban from 8-year-old vehicles and older, the importation of vehicles that are 8 years old and older. And for that, I give them a plus. So what is my assessment? Right, in summary, 1 out of 10 decisions so far is considered positive. 9 out of 10 decisions they've made so far have been negative and will have negative impacts, have had negative impacts, and will have negative impacts on the country. So they get a big fat F, right? So for the first 100 days in office, I give this government an F for their performance, and I hope that their performance will change or improve, but I'm doubtful that this will change because they have been in power for 23 years before the last 5 years. From 1992 all the way to 2015 they were in power, and they did the same foolishness that they're doing now. So we have no expectation that things will change for the better going forward. Why? Because the same people who were in charge during the 23 years when they messed up the economy have been put back in charge now in the 21st century, in 2020, now that they've been placed back in power. But perhaps you see things differently from me. In the comments below, let me know what your assessment is. Remember, it's just politics. You are welcome to have your own opinion. Everyone is free to participate and invited to participate in a democracy, and you don't have to agree with me or disagree with me. I'm free to say what I feel, what I think, and so are you. However, keep it respectful, keep the racism out of it, and share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening here in Georgetown, Guyana. Later!